This is Sam and Joku, host of the Ravens Talk podcast. Brand new head coach Jesse Minter is now officially the new head coach for the Baltimore Ravens. Talk about what that means to the Ravens moving forward.
And I'm Kevin Oestreicher, the host of Locked On Ravens. Jesse Minter already starting to request guys for his staff and fill out his staff in Baltimore. We'll talk about that and so much more coming up on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show.
Rise and shine. It's the Ravens Squad. Everything Baltimore Ravens every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of Charm City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Flock together and squad up. The Ravens Squad Show starts now.
What is going on, Ravens flock? Welcome to another edition of the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. This is Sam and Joku, joined with, as always, Kevin Oestreicher and Kadre Smile. The Ravens have a new head coach now. We had a show on Wednesday, and who knew that just a few hours after that show, the Ravens would make it official and agree to terms with Jesse Minter as the new head coach for the Baltimore Ravens, only the fourth ever head coach in the history of the franchise. We will talk all about Jesse Minter being the guy. We'll talk also about who is the offensive coordinator is going to be. We know he has the defense on lock. Now they need a Ravens offense coordinator to pair with Lamar Jackson and get the most out of this offense. Speaking of this offense, could change be on the horizon for this offense and defense. This roster could be in flux in a little bit in more ways than one. We'll talk about that on this episode, but we're going to get started with the grand spanking new news, especially for those just joining the show. Jesse Minter, the new head coach for the Baltimore Ravens. Kevin, I got to start with you here. How do you feel? Are you excited about it? No John Harbaugh anymore. Jesse Minter now the new head coach.
Yeah, I like it a lot. And it's something that we had, talked about on that Wednesday show a little bit of, feels like there are a lot of winds swirling around Jesse Minter and felt like the Ravens had kind of locked in on him. And obviously we know that is what happened. But I think he brings the best of both worlds, in my opinion. And that's something that I've talked about a lot over the last couple of days, is I think that Minter's floor already is very high with what he's proven, both at Michigan and obviously in LA these past couple of years. But also, I think he has the ceiling to grow alongside this team over the next couple of seasons. And I think a lot of people obviously look to the Mike McDonald blueprint that happened, and obviously not just for the Baltimore connection, but, he goes from Baltimore to Seattle, has a year where, year one figuring things out, they go 10-7, and then, they go a lot of roster additions, a lot of new guys added in, and now they're in the Super Bowl. Minter is someone that I think is going to be able to have a lot of success, because you look at what he did in Los Angeles, and the defensive spending in LA was very low, but he was able to get the best out of his talent there and do less or do more with less, essentially. And so you look at guys like Tulio over there in LA, who was awesome. Obviously, people point to Odafe Owe and him moving to LA and Jesse Minter getting the best out of him. And, from everybody, former Ravens players who were with him in Baltimore to guys who were currently with the Chargers saying their farewells and essentially like mourning that they were losing this guy and he was going elsewhere. There's just been so much positivity surrounding Jesse Minter, where it feels like for a lot of these candidates, it's like, yeah, they have a lot of strengths, but there are some clear-cut weaknesses. Like the weakness that I have been able to find is that he struggles against Liam Cohen. Like that's the one weakness and unfortunately, the Ravens do play Jacksonville this year, so maybe that continues, but it's just the way that he's able to do a lot of different things with his personnel. He's not overly aggressive. His blitz rate was actually very low in Los Angeles compared to other teams, but he's situational. He knows what to do and use guys in very unique ways. And, Willie Snead was on Locked On Ravens with me on Friday, and he talked about, because he was in LA with the Chargers for a couple of days last year for minicamp, and he was talking about how he was putting his guys in position, talked about Derwin James and him being down the line, reminded him a lot of Kyle Hamilton, and putting his guys in the best positions to win and to make plays. So I know that a lot of people, again, I would have loved Clint Kubiak in Baltimore, especially after what we've seen from him this playoff run. He's been absolutely cooking in Seattle right now. I think, though, there is a lot that Jesse Minter can do in Baltimore, assuming they get the staff right. Now, something we're going to talk about later in the show, I know. But this, to me, it was about getting the defensive standard and excellence back to Baltimore with this hire, while also being able to get Lamar Jackson and this offense back on track. I think that Jesse Minter can do both with his defenses and what we've seen from him, but also, you do have Lamar Jackson. An offensive coordinator certainly is important, but you do have Lamar Jackson. So I think that, again, you don't want to get back into the Lamar, please save us type mode with whoever you hire. You want to be able to have those guys work together and be a cohesive unit. I know there's been a lot of questions about how things ended in Baltimore with certain relationships and whatnot, which some has already been refuted. But regardless, I think that the Ravens, this was a guy that was very popular in this head coaching search, and it was something we talked about. And the fact of, all right, are the Ravens maybe speeding this thing up? I know, Sam, you and I had this conversation after the squad show. It was like, Jesse Minter's getting really popular in this cycle. Do the Ravens feel like this is their guy and they're willing to not interview guys like Kubiak again or Shieldhouse or whoever who's in the championship game because they don't want to risk losing him? And based off reports, the answer to that question was yes, they liked him a lot and they brought him in the building to secure him, and he's your next head coach.
Woo! Man, I mean, I feel like, to infinity and beyond, where you're just going to get an opportunity to reestablish what has been lost. And when you look at all of what Kevin was saying, what really stuck out to me was the veterans and the guys who weren't necessarily able to live up to their fullness, but yet when they got under his tutelage and his coaching, they were able to gain a better perspective of their talents. He appreciated it. And as Derwin James said, hey, he's an alpha. So defensively, when I was with the Ravens and you have Marvin Lewis as a defensive coordinator, you had a few of the guys on the staff that would later become head coaches elsewhere. The Jack Del Rios, the Rex Ryans of the world and such. And the alpha in the room, literally Marvin would challenge them, yet it would be in such a way that they all were just this cohesive group that understood the assignment. Hey, we're going to get the best out of this ball club. And part of getting the best out of this ball club is making sure we're so detailed oriented and we demand excellence. And listening to Derwin James, listening to Tony Jefferson, listening to an experienced veteran like an Eric Weddle, listening or seeing the Odafe Owehs, to me, that is where I smile and I say, the king is dead, long live the king. Okay, great, good for you that you're in New York, go Big Blue on your own terms. Great job for hooking it up with the fan base and bringing out the full-page ad. All right, moving on now, we have an opportunity ahead of us with Jesse Minter, and what I appreciated about it is that when you look at hires like getting Notre Dame's coach, defensive back coach, which is slipping my mind right now, but that's okay, because Kevin knows who it is. That is where, bigger picture-wise, now let's get in some guys that would be, as I was saying with Marvin, kind of head coach-like, strong personality-like, to then bring back the swagger, which I then say it goes all the way back to Eric DeCosta needing to step up his game in the scouting department and bring in some horses and some dogs that can really be what the Ravens need defensively in the upfront and such. So we can see a return to excellence. And then let's look at what the offense can do, because if Sam Darnold can lead the league in interceptions and turnovers, and yet he's playing in the big dance because of a defense that was just tenacious and dominating, when Drake May is sitting there like, yo, I'm about to go ahead and potentially hoist up a Lombardi absent Bill Belichick. And I know that I wasn't playing my greatest in the playoffs because I had a defense that was just crushing it in the turnover department. mother of pearl. I'm sure Lamar Jackson and company are sitting there doing a happy dance because that's what this is all about. Having one side of the football support the other. And, oh, by the way, Jordan Stout is an all-pro. Let us feast on long field positions and trying to go ahead and score on a great Ravens defense. Let's go.
Great. Well said. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Lamar hasn't had a great defense like this since 2023. And what did the Ravens do? Oh, they went to the AFC Championship game where they unfortunately forgot to run the football. But notwithstanding, he finally has a defense to go with it. Now he has a defensive-minded head coach to go along with it. And it was always Jesse Minter. I think there's a lot of talk and reports have been coming out recently about the process. And Jesse Minter was always pretty much the favorite. And as Kevin mentioned, were you going to take a chance? You wanted to see Nate Chillhouse? You wanted to see Chris Shula? You wanted to see Davis Webb? Or do you want to take a chance before the Raiders come in and scoop them up? So the Ravens pretty much went ahead and did what they had to do. Are you nervous, Q, about the problem that may be facing the Ravens? And we'll get onto that in the second segment of the show about whether or not they can find an offensive coordinator to pair with the defensive mind of Jesse Minter. Or would you rather have had a Clint Kubiak come in and to have your pick of the litter, really, with a lot of great defensive minds out there to pair up with Roquan Smith and Kyle Hamilton to get that defensive control?
I think, part of this cycle, 10 head coaches were let go, staffs and offenses, defenses were in upheaval. When it's all said and done, there's some really strong coaches that are out there that are going to be on this Ravens staff. I'm not worried about that. I think it's about getting it right rather than getting it rushed. Rushing it does nothing. Getting it right is critical. It looks right now, based upon all of what we're hearing and seeing, the Ravens got it right when it came to Jesse Minter. So the other element of it all, offensively, okay, Clint, see what? Okay, Kliff, see what? Sure, we all would have, from the outside, loved McDaniel and all that entailed. But again, there are things that we simply aren't privy to on the outside that, well, when it comes down to it, we're going to get these quote-unquote Joe Brady's or the Stillhouses of the world, and we're going to figure it out. And I think that's where I am trusting the process of it all and letting Jesse cook with putting together a staff that will more than complement what Lamar Jackson's skill set is all about.
Yeah, I think that with the whole Jesse thing and the way that it kind of applies to the offensive coordinator position, there is something to be said about, okay, Jesse's your guy, he's a very popular candidate, and, there would probably be some regret if the Ravens, because again, they're not looking for a guy that's going to be in Baltimore for 3 to 4 years, and then it doesn't work. And it's like, okay, they want John Harbaugh. They want 18 years. They want 2 decades of a guy and someone to grow alongside the organization like John would have, or I guess like John did. And they want this guy to do that as well. Now, you didn't want to lose out on that guy. So you saw this interest and you said, okay, well, we don't want to risk losing him. There are a lot of other candidates, and the reports are saying they liked a couple of those guys, but you don't want to risk. And then all of a sudden, maybe if you like Kubiak, does he go to Buffalo? And then what about Shieldhouse? Oh, now maybe he's in Vegas, or maybe not even Vegas. Maybe it's Cleveland. Like, you have so many different scenarios there. With the offensive coordinator position, I just don't think there's a guy like that anymore. Like, if Kliff Kingsbury were to go to, I don't know, Tennessee, I'd be like, okay. Like, I'm not even that big on Kingsbury anyway right now, but I'd be like, okay. If it was Joe Brady, who I've come around on a little bit, and Willie Snead fully endorsed on the show to be the Ravens offensive coordinator, if he were to go to Tennessee tomorrow, I would be like, okay, But the only guy that I would have cut this process short for was Mike McDaniel. That's the only guy I would have done it for, where you know that he's the hot commodity, he's the hot candidate, everybody wants him, he's the best guy for that job. And if you want to evaluate your options with some of these younger guys like a Shieldhouse and a Webb, and McDaniel comes calling and says, I'm in, you say, all right, we're in too. And you cut that short and he's your guy. But that's not a possibility anymore. So to me, I think that, yes, do your due diligence, get the process and finish it through. Because again, even if you lose out on Shieldhouse to the Cleveland head coaching job, or, Davis Webb maybe goes to Vegas, I don't know. Like, yeah, those are guys I'm really intrigued in, but there's not a particular guy. Now, if all those options start to fly off the board and all of a sudden it starts to get really slim for you, then I think we can revisit this conversation. But you want to overturn every single stone to make sure you're putting the best offense in position. Because again, and I'll say this, I think that if they hired Kubiak and that offensive coordinator position was set, I think that there were enough defensive coordinators that I really liked to be like, okay, like they're in a good spot with who they could hire there. I think there are less offensive coordinators I feel good about than potential defensive coordinators in a Kubiak, but that doesn't mean there aren't quality options. But I don't want them to all of a sudden, rush on an interview with Shieldhouse and be like, all right, Davis Webb, we don't need to hear from you. We don't need to hear from you and you and you, and just hire that guy. Make sure you do everything you can to get the right person in this building for Lamar Jackson.
I agree completely. And that is.
May I interject real quick and say, piggybacking off what Kevin is saying, think about it. Because you have a franchise quarterback, that's where I think you need to get it right. Because you have the salary cap. You know that it's going to be real challenging, bigger picture-wise, when it comes to what surmounts as okay, if we can get the coordinator right, we're going to get this second contract that's going to be, or third technically, that's going to be hanging over this franchise and all that it entails. Like, why rush it? All of what Kevin is saying, I'm like, shoot, you're right. If McDaniel's not walking through that door, I ain't rushing it. We're good.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think if McDaniel's doesn't walk through those doors, you don't rush it. You go through the process. And I think they made the right choice here. I think most people agree that was the right choice. Now, there's another choice that has to be made. Who is going to be the offense coordinator for this football team? Because that ties hand in hand with the success of Lamar Jackson on the football field in 2026. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about the options that are in place for the Baltimore Ravens and Jesse Minter as we get ready for what should be a pretty fascinating offseason for the Baltimore Ravens here next on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to stay locked into every moment than with PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where it always feels good to be right. With football season coming down to its final stretch, now is the perfect time to close it out strong. PrizePicks makes watching the game even more exciting by letting you build simple lineups around player projections, no drafts, no waiting, just football action all the way through the playoffs. Love being able to mix stars from different teams and build lineups that fit how you watch the game. You got, Stephon Diggs on one end, and you got Sam Darnold on the other end, building your lineup to make it perfect for PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it is good to be right. All right, we're back here, Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Again, we're available twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You could also catch Kevin on the Locked On Ravens podcast 5 days a week, including the weekends if the news is worthy. It's certainly been the case so far as we get through this hiring cycle with the new head coach. Now, the Ravens have made the decision to hire Jesse Minter, a football defensive guru, a wonder kid, the likes of which we haven't seen since Mike McDonald, and he is playing off in the Super Bowl to represent the NFC. So that should give you a little taste of what could be on the horizon for this football team if they get things going. But Mike McDonald didn't do it alone. He also has Clint Kubiak as the offensive coordinator. So Jesse Minter will need to find a guy just like that to get things going for Lamar Jackson. Now, interestingly enough, before the hiring process concluded with Jesse Minter being the head coach, it was widely accepted by a report from Diana Rossini that Kliff Kingsbury would be the most logical choice for the Ravens because the players loved him. But since Jesse Minter has been the head coach, there has been no signing, at least officially, of Kingsbury. That doesn't mean he's going to be the option, but it's very interesting that the Ravens continue to interview candidates, some big names that you know, some not so big without any offense coordinator experience, at least not in the NFL level. So it means that Jesse Minter is scouring ahead along with the Ravens front office to find guys to fit this football team. Kevin, after hearing that, after knowing that maybe a guy like Nate Shieldhouse or a guy like Davis Webb without play calling experience, how do you feel about the notion that Jesse Minter, at least on the outside looking in, feels like he's going to get to choose and not really have to rely too much on the players' opinions to get the offense coordinator here in Baltimore?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, it's a collaborative effort, but it kind of goes back to what Steve Bisciotti said, where it's like, players can have their inputs on guys, and I think that's what should happen. Like, I think Lamar should have, his opinions heard, and the receivers and Derrick Henry and all those guys. Like, it's a team, and I think that within that, it comes like, hey, Jesse maybe talking to Lamar, being like, how are you feeling about this? Or maybe, that's a process where, Eric is obviously also involved, and Ozzie and all these guys. So you're like, all right, what do you want to do here? What are your thoughts? And then they take those thoughts and then they make their decision based off of that. Maybe it's a couple names, but I know that the report you're talking about with Danny Rossini, obviously we've covered that here. There have been a couple of reports, and we're actually going to do a deep dive on the couple of guys that have requested to interview from Baltimore tomorrow. Obviously, Bears offensive coordinator, and then the Lions assistant head coach and wide receivers coach. So obviously for the Bears, that would be Declan Doyle. And then for the Lions, the guy they're interviewing is Scotty Montgomery. But even still, to kind of your point, the thing that I talked about in the first part of the show with, the Kubiak and defensive coordinator versus the Minter and the offensive coordinator, for Baltimore, obviously it's about getting the best candidate in for Lamar Jackson. That is the absolute number one priority. But we also do have to wonder that, is this, because look, I assume that any coordinator that's going to come in here, even if they're not the right fit, and I hope that they are, but even if they're not, Lamar Jackson has a specific floor that will help this offense do really good things. And I think that the Ravens, the next question becomes, are they going to get caught up in this offensive coordinator cycle where a guy has a great year or two with Lamar and then they get hired away to be a head coach, and then you bring in someone else and then they have a great year with Lamar and then they get hired away to be a head coach. And it's that sort of cycle. Now, again, I'm not factoring that into my decision if I'm the Ravens, because I don't care, quite frankly. I mean, I want the best guy to come in, even if that's just for a season. I don't want to take the second or third best option for Lamar if it means they're going to be there for a couple more years. No, get the best guy in the building. And I know that's probably how they're operating too. I know I'm not speaking anything that is out of the ordinary or something that's new here, but it is interesting, some of these younger guys. And again, I think that we'll hear more names. The thing with some of these younger coordinators, I know a lot of people look towards the Zach Orr situation on defense past couple of years and say, a guy with no play calling experience in the NFL. Oh man. Well, we have to remember Zach Orr did not call any plays at any level leading into his defensive coordinator stint. He wasn't ready, and we can all acknowledge that he was not ready. I think that Shieldhouse and Webb and some of these other guys, like, they are a bit more ready than I think Zach Orr was at that point. So I'm not going to use that in the defensive failures that Zach Orr had and completely, detach myself from a non-experienced coordinator. Now, again, I just also don't think there are a bunch of experienced coordinators that really do it for me right now. Like, again, I've come around on Joe Brady. I think that'd be my top choice, but I mean, I'm still not in on Kliff Kingsbury. I am all the way. Matt Nagy is my Kevin Stefanski for Q. I'm all the way out on Matt Nagy.
Same.
and Brian Dable. I don't think it's the right fit. So I'm at this point. I am fine with Brady coming in. I also am really intrigued by guys like Davis Webb and Shieldhouse. And, I think Doyle's really intriguing too in Chicago. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more on tomorrow's show, and I'm sure throughout the show here tonight. But these are the types of guys early on. And again, just because they're interviewing these guys doesn't mean that they're going to get a job. And I think it's interesting because not all the guys who are interviewing for head coaching jobs are going to get head coaching jobs. So they're also probably looking over all of their options and figuring things out. So I think for now, Baltimore, the things that Jesse Minter has done in his short few days as the Ravens head coach, with the reported coach signing and some of these other guys that are reportedly strong candidates to join the staff, I think it's good so far, even with Joe Cullen. Like, I'm sure we're going to see a lot of familiarity. Like, I'm sure we're going to talk about Mike Mickens a little bit. I did that this morning as well. He's a guy that has connections to Jesse Minter. Joe Cullen's a guy that has connections to Jesse Minter. So connections, it's a connections-based business, connection-based league. We all know that. But I do think that at the end of the day, you're going to see a couple of these offensive coordinator candidates maybe get head coaching jobs with other teams, but there's probably going to be a couple guys left over that are going to give strong consideration to that job.
I think Cullen defensively, there's familiarity, and that familiarity with a mentor is what you're looking for. Because if mentor is going to be that coordinator / head coach, you want that guy in Cullen to be able to articulate the process of the practice and the game planning prep. So when you are in the game, everyone's on the same page. Offensively, I think when you got guys like a Declan Doyle, who I had an opportunity to kind of be up close and personal with his play calling capabilities, he is in a similar situation with Ben Johnson, is the one who's actually calling the actual plays, similar to an Andy Reid. But I think for Declan, he's got a ton of experience under Ben Johnson. The way in which that offense operates with Caleb Williams, I've seen 2 games in person, one against Philadelphia, another against in the playoffs against the Rams. And I'll tell you, like, it's very much a Lamar Jackson type of friendly offense that can function very powerfully. There are opportunities for shots down the field for big plays. And I know they love the Iceman, the way in which Caleb Williams turns into the Iceman for his heroics. Lamar Jackson can do those same things times 10. So I think if there was ever like a sleeper in my mind, it would be Declan. Joe Brady, it is intriguing to me. I know that they do a great job of running the ball. I know, obviously, they featured some quarterback run designs with Josh Allen. But it's something there that I can't quite put my finger on within the passing attack. Although I think if I'm Mark Andrews, Doyle or Joe Brady, he's probably loving life right now because he's like, oh, both of them love their tight ends. Now, with that said, yeah, I can see what you're saying as far as, Kliff Kingsbury and some of the, reports out that doesn't make him like the hottest of hottest commodities. I can see that, maybe a little bit of his shine is wearing off a little bit. But I still like his offensive philosophy, and I think it would fit Lamar. But I also think from a aspect of him having head coaching experience and him, doing what he did from an alpha aspect of things in Washington as well as in Arizona, Jaden Daniels looked really good and smart, and obviously they were able to get to the NFC Championship game, so there was something there. I think those names, you can't necessarily go wrong. Steelhouse is intriguing to me in that the way in which the offense functions, there are opportunities for big plays down the field and shot plays down the field. So the big play is those big-time intermediate routes and those big crossing routes. There's some quick game opportunity, get the ball out of Lamar's hands real quick. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Tom Munkin-esque type of, hey, feature Lamar, killer instincts, type of a mindset. But again, you don't really know what he can do with the quarterback run scenario, which makes Lamar unique. So those are some of the things that are kind of running through my mind, and I'd be curious what would be running through the mind of Minter as he sits down and talks it over, trying to figure out who's going to be the guy that's going to lead and help his franchise quarterback.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of interesting names that pop up. All of those names, you got to assume at least one of those guys are going to be the offensive coordinator. But as you mentioned, if you take away the experience of play calling in the National Football League, there are a lot of intriguing options out there. I think if you went with an offensive coordinator, yeah, you'd have like your solid, strong defensive-minded coaches that you can lean on to kind of fill in the gaps. But in this case, you still got some nice, opportunity here to give Lamar Jackson a chance to pair with an offensive mind. I wouldn't shy away from the young guy just because of Zachary. I know a lot of Ravens fans and pundits are using that as a crutch and kind of eliminating some of these guys, but I'm saying go for it. I trust the process. I'm in the honeymoon phase of Minter. He can do no wrong. As long as he's not Greg Roman or Matt Nagy, go for it, baby. I'm all about it. Let's see what you can do, young man. Let's see what you can do. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the offense. Changes on the horizon for the roster. I saw a couple of comments on the chat discussing a certain player that I think we're going to be talking about a great deal in this upcoming spot. But, let's stay tuned and see what we can muster up in terms of conversation here as we get ready for the third segment next on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your post seen on the other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page to help you reach the right candidates faster. If I needed to hire someone for the show, I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need, real experience, not just a resume buzzword. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. Sponsored jobs boost your post to the other people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of the show get $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. We're back. Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Kevin Oestreicher, Kadri Ismail, Sam Njoku talking Ravens football. Big day indeed. It's Kevin's birthday, so everybody in the chat, go ahead and give Kevin a shout out. It's his birthday. He's still working hard. Put out a show today. We'll put out a show tomorrow. So wishing him a happy birthday as we get going. It's a crazy day. I mean, I think Q also had a birthday a couple of months back. So very much in the process of doing what you got to do to get on the show and talking Ravens football. We definitely enjoy it. Speaking of enjoying it, there's some players who may not have enjoyed very much how 2025 went, and that's no surprise. The Ravens failed to reach the playoffs, but one Rashad Bateman got on Instagram, unfortunately, got on the story, said some things that may have got some people's attention. Now, he did later on go on and say that some of his stuff, he said that he was hacked. So it's very interesting to see what your thoughts are on it, Kevin and Q. But just to give you a little taste of what he said afterwards, I'll read a little snippet here. He said, I didn't know I was going to address this or just let it ride, but was told to at least try by my team. My apologies for the confusion. My account was hacked by someone I know. This one, others, although I agree with some of the stuff. Since y'all know me, I ain't got the time for some of this stuff either. I'm trying to paraphrase a lot of curse words here. Didn't even realize before I started talking.
Family friendly. Yep.
Cut through the nonsense. I was putting up baby strollers all day when I got the news. Dad life on the way. I'm trying to get some sleep. End of the day, this is all business, and I know what type of player I am. I don't care where I'm at. I love ball, and I look forward to doing this wherever I'm at. I appreciate Baltimore and love playing there, despite what anybody is saying. Is what you guys say. City changed me, became grown there, changed my life. Wherever life takes me, that's up to the Lord, and I follow. But I'm blessed where I'm at. That's pretty much where he's going with it. But the reason why he had that post is because someone, maybe it was Rashad, maybe not, had a clip of the Rams and Seattle Seahawks game, and he posted, all someone needs is the real opportunity. I'm a spin, proved it, F the extra stuff. So that's pretty much what went down with it. It was really crazy that happened early in the morning, but I guess he was just watching the game, got a little in his feelings because he didn't have quite the season many expected. Kevin, I will start with you. In fact, I'll start with you, Q, because you've been a player in this league. I want to get your thoughts on this. How do you feel about what Bateman said or didn't say, or just the context around it, and just how his season went overall? And do you expect him to potentially get moved in this offseason if things don't work out the way he expected to?
Okay, so just to be clear, you are saying he or some alleged hacker wrote in his story that it was about the Seahawks game and the Seahawks and Rams, the way they were slinging it around. He was saying he needs a chance to have that style of opportunity for himself.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's
essentially,
the Yep.
Okay. And he did not or did badmouth the current Ravens regime.
He did bring up the post was, if it was a hacker, was a post of when Eric DeCosta talked about the problems drafting receivers. This is way back when. And then he brought up again about, how he needs chances, the team needs chances, the Ravens players need chances, and yada, yada, yada. Paraphrasing.
Okay, so you're saying, I get that. So you're saying he started off, I just want the full picture so I know what I want to say next, but full picture of, because you were saying about Eric DeCosta, he put in there something about that, or?
Yes,
no,
it was.
Go ahead. It was a screenshot of a post that Sarah had quoted Eric DeCosta talking about the wide receiver. It was a couple of years ago at this point now.
I understand that. Yep, go ahead.
But he in the story said something like it's all good. Like I'll have to find what he actually said. But I don't think there was anything. If anything, I inferred it as something about Harbaugh. But he essentially said, so he put his response in there in the screenshot too. And his response to that was, how about you play to your player's strengths, stop pointing the finger at us in number 8, blame the one you let do this, take the heat 24/7, this, that, and the other. And then he said, quote, LMAO, and it holds, but we clean swept. So I infer that was more about Harbaugh than DeCosta. But again, it leaves a lot up for interpretation. That's not confirmed what he meant. I mean, it's very, very vague.
Gotcha. So my thinking is this, knowing what I know, he just, for whatever the reason, did not get along with Todd Monken. And I think in Todd's offense the year before, and I was often like, it seems as though the ex-receiver, which is what Bateman is, the guy away from the tight end, the ex-receiver isn't really a primary thought in the Monken offense. And there was a couple of games that I was like, boy, when is he going to, get a chance to get involved? And sure enough, it wasn't until Lamar needed him that, i.e., the toe gate game where Isaiah Likely toe was on the white line. That game, if you recall, the big play didn't occur until Bateman had the big ball down the football field, but that was off of the second act. In other words, the first act, he wasn't primary, but then all of a sudden Lamar scrambled and threw it down the field. And of course, Bateman was, Johnny on the spot. And he goes on to have, a strong game. You look at a game against Tampa Bay down in Tampa. And again, he had a play that was actually drawn up for him. And he made a huge, beautiful route, huge catch, the whole 9 yards. And it was like, you could see where it's like, look, you feature me, I'm going to be able to do what I do. So there were a lot of disgruntled moments last year because he simply wasn't getting featured in the offense. Whereas, a Zay Flowers, it's easy to get him the ball on a flanker screen or on a smoke route. And then you got the deep crossers, and then you got some of the other things that, would help feature or get Zay Flowers hot and ready to go. So I think for a guy like Bateman, he's a route runner. He's a guy that, is a timing guy. Give me the ball on a deep comeback. Hey, I got man-to-man. Trust the process. I'm going to beat him on a double move. It's those kind of plays that I remember when he was a rookie, and his quote-unquote coming out party was when Kevin and I, we did our show, Locked On Ravens, and it was the Cleveland game where Tyler Huntley needed to get the ball out to someone, and Bateman just took over. And Hayden was man-to-man with him, and he was cooking him. And from that point forward, I was like, I got it. He's like Jackson Smith and Jigba, where if you give me the ball, I can make plays for you, but he is a backside receiver. He can be primary, but you got to dial him up. And that's just not Monken's offense. So with that said, I think the post was in reflection to, okay, that happened before. Let's not let it happen again. And this time, why don't y'all hook me up? And in this hookup, I'm going to be ready for whatever. That is my thinking on where I see the bigger picture, and all the other stuff is just him doing smoke screens and trying to, just stir the pot, or whomever was quote unquote hacking him and trying to stir the pot.
Yeah, that's where it gets crazy, because the hacker, because a lot of people were saying, I saw it a bunch, and I've also seen it in the chat as well, where like the hacker, like he typed very similarly to how Rashad kind of sends his messages on social media, and then I saw that in the chat a couple times, and I haven't gone back and looked at what those messages were compared to what Bateman ends up saying or stuff like that, with like the bat emoji signal and all that stuff. I think that might be what people were referring to, as he uses the bat emoji for Bateman or whatever. But that kind of makes it weird. And also, he did post, and I have to get the order of events right on timeline, but he deleted every single post from this alt. It's not actually his main account. This is an alternate account. He also posted, or the hacker posted, Ravens practice footage of him cooking. He cooked Nate Wiggins. He cooked Nate Wiggins, and I can't remember if it was Nate on the other one as well. But again, I don't want to speak on that too much, because I can't remember the order of operations, whether that was before or after Bateman posted the I was hacked message. But it's almost like, and it's not quite the same, because people were saying, wait, it's not his real account. Are we sure this account is Bateman's? This is a pretty known alternate account. It's almost like Brandon Stevens. He had that alternate photography account where he would post all of his cool photos that he took, which I actually miss. I liked when Brandon put those photos out of the guys just chilling in the locker room or before games or whatnot. But this is like a pretty well-known alternate Rashad Bateman account that, people know about. But it's a weird situation. We know that Bateman didn't have a great year last year. He earned that contract last year, in my opinion. He did. He had a great year last year. There were a lot of questions about how he was going to respond. But this year, for a lot of different reasons, it just didn't work. And we can all acknowledge that it was very disappointing. And, it is a little bit interesting. He made it clear he was very he likes Baltimore, loves Baltimore, like that whole thing. He made it clear, but also left the door kind of open for what potential next steps could be in his career. Obviously, we have a long way. We're not even in the offseason yet, like we are in the Ravens offseason, but the NFL offseason has not begun yet. So this is all, it almost reminds me of, what is it, like The Simpsons, like 0 days without Ravens drama. Here we're back, 0 days without Ravens drama. So I don't know what the plan is for Bateman this offseason. He's under contract. Like, they signed him to the deal. They could throw him in a trade if they wanted to. I don't have the dead money number up in front of me. I do not believe that's an option, though. I'd assume that, with the way that his contract is structured, cutting him is not an option, and that'd be a pretty poor waste of going about this situation, in my opinion, especially because I still believe that Bateman is a very talented player, but sometimes just doesn't work in a place after a certain amount of time. And maybe that's what this is. Now, again, I'd like to see him in a new system. I think it'd be cool to kind of see how that would work. But, does Baltimore and does Jesse Minter see this? And it's like, I don't really want to have this distraction potential around. And I'm not calling Bateman a distraction, but, it's just like the Ravens probably don't want to deal with that. Like they don't want to deal with, whatever it was. And again, like Bateman said he was hacked. And if that is true, it's unfortunate. Obviously, I've seen a lot of people doubt that. It's crazy because it does happen, but we've also seen instances where people say they're hacked and they're actually not, is a way to get out of it. So I know people are on the fence about whether it happened or not, but at the end of the day, the Ravens are going to have to make a decision on Bateman because I think that they do need wide receiver help in the offseason in some way, shape, or form. Is that just depth pieces, or is that another guy to put next to Zay Flowers? And if it's another guy to put next to Zay Flowers, does Bateman become your number 3? Or if you make a trade, is he involved going the other way in a deal like that? So a lot of questions.
I would say this. I would say that you need to go ahead and let him do a trade all your compensatory picks that you have and all the other round picks that you have and make a big splash. You want to make a big splash? George Pickens, get him and sign him, trade down for because if he's an unrestricted free agent, then make a play for him and trade away Bateman and get some more picks to then trade away to move up in the draft and get yourself a real bad guy, hardcore, kick butt, take names later to infinity and beyond, and get literally a DN or a real mauler, Marshall Yonda type dude at offensive line.
Yeah, could be what happens, and this is what we're talking about.
EDC, do it. Do it now. George Pickens.
Heard it here first. Let's go.
You heard it here first. And I'm not opposed to that. Now, one funny comment I had to bring up, Kwame says that Rashad's so lame for hacking bait. He thinks that, this guy was definitely hacked, Rashad, by Mr. Bateman. So a little play on words there from Kwame about the hacking situation. I don't know who hacked who, but I will say I do agree with you, Q. Rashad Bateman is a timing receiver. I've said this all along. So maybe an offensive coordinator comes in and changes the way the Ravens do business on offense, and that may give a guy like Rashad Bateman an opportunity to shine in an offense with Lamar Jackson. But if you can't get it done, then yeah, you can trade him away, get a guy like George Pickens, and he might be a little headache in the locker room now, but his talent speaks for itself. So very interesting to consider. We're going to talk a little bit more about what is on the horizon for this Ravens football team, roster-wise and staff-wise, here next in the final segment of the show on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. What's going on, Ravens flock? We're back here, Locked On Ravens Squad Show, available twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can also catch the Locked On Ravens podcast with Kevin 5 days a week for your Ravens news. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're watching this live now, or if you're listening wherever you get your podcast, give us 5 stars. Tell a friend about the show who hasn't experienced the Locked On Ravens Squad Show yet, and tell them that this Ravens news cycle has us talking Ravens football 24/7, 365. Even when the Ravens aren't playing, we're still here talking Ravens football. Now, the Ravens do have some decisions to make, not just with the coaching staff, but with the roster. We talked about offensive coordinator. last segment, well, 2 segments ago, but I didn't get a chance to get your overall assessment about who your number 1 pick would be. So, Kevin, I'll start with you. You mentioned a lot of names earlier, a lot of great candidates for Jesse Minter to have as the helm offensive coordinator. Who would be your number 1 pick if you had to choose to be the OC for Lamar Jackson?
I really like Nate Shieldhouse. I really do. You know, Davis Webb is a close second for me, and then Joe Brady is third. I knew you didn't ask for top 3, but I decided to do it anyway. But I think for me, Shieldhouse is super intriguing because of, you know, obviously the McVay connection, the high-powered offense that Rams team has. Now, you know, of course, the Ravens don't have the duo that the Rams do at wide receiver in Puka and Devontae Adams, but you know, I think that Baltimore has a better run game than the Rams do. You know, I think if they're able to bring back Charlie Kolar, you know, for as bad as the year Mark Andrews had, I think they have a better tight end room than the Rams do. And that's even assuming Isaiah likely leaves, which I think we're all kind of bracing for at this point. Webb is intriguing to me. I know the whole, you know, like the whole Bo Nix thing happened in this and the conditions and the Patriots thing, but like, Webb is someone who, I mean, you've said it, Sam, apparently is interviewed well in some spots and, you know, people alike. And again, like I said, not all of these head coach candidates are going to get an opportunity to be a head coach. Some guys will go back to their positions. Other guys might take a step down, but we do know that Baltimore was interviewing these guys, some for both head coach and coordinator opportunities. And even if it wasn't official, they were probably still gathering intel on these guys and being like, hey, is there another role for you? And so, again, it's taken me a little bit of time to get over the Zach Orr stuff and be like, okay, I'm open to having the first-time play caller in a spot like this. If you want to go with the experienced coordinator, like I said, Joe Brady would be the guy. You know, it feels like there might be momentum between Shieldhouse and Cleveland for that head coaching opportunity. I think they're just going to hire Schwartz and call it a day. But, like, at least Shieldhouse, there is momentum there. Feels like the Cardinals are going to go with Mike LaFleur. You know, there's potential maybe Shieldhouse goes there, but at this point it feels like Webb, if it's not Las Vegas, there are like 5 different guys that it's like, if it's not Las Vegas, they're just going to go back and have their same roles. It's Webb, it's Kubiak. I could see in Buffalo. Shieldhouse also maybe could be in Buffalo as well. But it feels like after those, because apparently the what people are kind of saying is that, you know, these head coaching opportunities are probably going to fill up fast over the next couple of days. And once we kind of get clarity on that, there'll be more of an opportunity. I could also see them going the route of promoting a positional coach somewhere to offensive coordinator that's not like a pass game guy. But I think that should be the route that they go, is someone who is, because they have the run game figured out. Like they've carried that over from Greg Roman and like they've done all that well. Get a guy who's has that high flyer, maybe not like quite air raid like a Kingsbury. Still, I'm not sold on that, but high flyer guy is able to get that pass game right. And then they can take the stuff from Greg Roman and the stuff they carried over, because, you know, for as bad as Greg Roman was at certain things, he is a run game mastermind. And so they were able to keep that into the Todd Monken era. I thought Monken used that effectively, but it's about getting in someone who knows how to use his personnel, which is something that, you know, a lot of people had some issues with Todd Monken for the majority of his time in Baltimore. Just a guy that has a pulse, and I think Lamar being involved in this process is going to be a really good thing for them. I don't know how involved he will be, but that's a roundabout way for me of saying I would love Shieldhouse, and if it's not him, I would definitely be okay with Davis Webb or Joe Brady.
So because it's KO's birthday, we allowed him to go ahead and do a Q rant. That was the
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate well, I can't do it as good as you. That's why they're called Q rants.
you did infinity and beyond, so I'm good. I'm happy for you. And again, the thoroughness of your answer, I would say, more than anything, what gives me just a touch of angst is that, you know, with Joe Brady, I know there's some similarities and comfort level with him, you know, obviously having a running quarterback, dual threat, I should say, quarterback in Josh Allen. But I think when it comes down to for Stillhouse, It's the way in which they utilize the tight ends, the dual threat of running game, and the explosive plays down the field. So you've got to factor in that looks very much similar to some of the personnel that the Ravens already have. The Declan Doyle scenario is intriguing because you're talking about quarterback play, and they too have a two-headed monster at the running back spot. They too use multiple tight ends, and their ability to almost Sean McVay-ish, Kyle Shanahan-esque, stretch zone-like, inside zone-like, but then get the quarterback outside the pocket with the deep overflow and vibes. The Declan Doyle is my first choice.
I like it. I like it a lot. I'm with you, Q. Declan Doyle is creeping up near the top. In fact, he is at the top of my list of guys who I would like to see here. Now, I have no idea. I felt pretty confident. I won't say confident. I was comfortable in Jesse Minter being the guy. You know that he'd have to pretty much fail the interview process, and Davis Webb would have to have another superb interview for them to move anywhere past Minter. But here I am totally oblivious to what the Ravens have planned. You thought it was going to be Kliff Kingsbury. Could still be the guy, but them continuing to interview guys, get a sense that the Ravens are going to do their due diligence with this one. Yeah, all of those guys you mentioned, Declan Doyle, Nate Chillhouse, Davis Webb, Joe Brady even, they're all great candidates for Lamar Jackson. It'll be very interesting to see what the Ravens do. But one more final note before we end the show here. I didn't want to spend too much time on it because I don't think it's worth talking about, but it is going around the webs here. Mike Florio did say something to the effect that Jesse Minter's hiring means that it is not 100% guaranteed that Lamar Jackson will be a quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens in 2026. Now, I think it might be a tad absurd, but I want to get your thoughts. Don't want to sway your opinions anyway. Kevin, I'll start with you. I saw your face when you mentioned it, so let's start with you. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think a tad is being generous when you're talking about absurd. I mean, it is ridiculous. I mean, this is it. Really, the Lamar Jackson trade stuff has really just come from Mike Florio over the last month or two. Like it was the Florio and Lamar and the Raiders stuff, and now it's Lamar and all this stuff with Jesse Minter. I mean, you don't think that was a big topic of conversation in the interviews of like, hey, Lamar's our guy. Do you want to coach Lamar Jackson? Yeah, I want to coach Lamar Jackson. I mean, I'm sure that's how those interviews went. At least I'm pretty sure. I mean, I wasn't in the building. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for those, but I mean, there's just literally no point, and even if you just want to talk about it from the pure football perspective of like, this team is ready to compete now, and what other quarterback are you going to get in here that's going to compete the same way we know Lamar Jackson can? I mean, even if you wanted to trade for someone in the same realm as Lamar Jackson, those elite quarterbacks people talk about, Joe Burrow is not coming through that door. Josh Allen's not coming through that door. Drake May's not coming through that door. Those young up and coming, like it makes no sense to me. This team is built and positioned to win around Lamar Jackson, whether it's the roster they've built around him, the scheme they've built. Lamar reportedly has been involved in the coordinator conversation. So like, why are you involving Lamar if you're going to trade him? Like that it's just, it makes no sense to me. And again, it feels like grasping at straws in my opinion.
It is the only trade I think we even should be considering or even talking about is George Pickens and getting him on a roster and then letting Bateman get traded away so we can upgrade Daniel Falele when he gets signed with the New York Giants. That's it. Like, what are we doing here? Daniel Falele, bye-bye. Voorhees, you get back into the rotation as just a swing kind of a, player just in case somebody, gets a boo-boo on their toe. Otherwise, you're not playing. And then bigger picture-wise, when it comes down to it, Mike Florio, kick rocks. Okay. Hey, we said it. All right. Let's move on.
I love it completely. You're absolutely right. Lamar Jackson's not going anywhere for the foreseeable future. I'd love for him to sign an extension before March 11th. I think that should be the focus of Eric DeCosta, and I'm sure it is, as they're closing in on that free agency period where they need to get a deal done. We'll talk a little bit more about free agency period after this whole hiring saga ends with the Baltimore Ravens, because still, again, a lot more coaches to fill up the ranks and get set to coach these guys, and for sure rebound from a very disappointing 2025 season. So again, I want to appreciate everyone so much for joining us here on the Locked On Ravens Squad show. Appreciate Kevin for joining the show on his birthday. Happy birthday, Kevin.
Thank you for the birthday wishes, by the way. Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, buddy. And as Laura said, please like and subscribe on your way out. Again, appreciate everyone for tuning in, joining us live or otherwise, and we will see you on Wednesday.